And that was amazing to see that. Even more amazing was later that night, because although this is a technology conference and people attend for the the panels and the discussions and all these sorts of things, it's also a big party at night, and you go there so that you can network with your friends and you can talk about startup ideas and all this sort of stuff. So there was this one guy that was at a bar. He was at a pub in downtown Austin, and the pub was crowded, and it was loud, it was noisy, there was music, and there was people talking. And he really wanted to have more of an intimate conversation with some of his friends. So he thought it'd be a good idea to send out a tweet that said, "This pub is too loud. Why don't we go over to this other pub?" And he named the pub. And in the 8 or 10 minutes it took him to walk to that pub, it had completely filled to capacity, and there was a line out the door. So his plan totally backfired. But what had happened was he had sent a tweet out to his followers. They then sent the similar tweet out to their followers, and so on and so forth. And 800 people had suddenly descended upon this pub in 8 minutes. And what came to mind to me was this idea of a flock of birds moving around an object in flight. This is something that looks incredibly choreographed. It's beautiful, and it looks really complicated, but it's not. The mechanics of flocking behavior are actually very simple. It's rudimentary communication among individuals in real time that allow all of them to behave almost as if they're one organism for a moment and go around something. And it's really a beautiful thing to behold. And we were seeing people doing this at this conference. And that was something that made the hair on the back of our neck stand up. Because seeing this tool, this real-time communication tool, out in the wild, enabling people to move together almost as if they were one organism, was chilling. Not because it was a party and they wanted to get to a better pub, but because we thought to ourselves, what if it wasn't a party? What if it was something more important? And that sort of sent shivers through our spines. We went straight back to San Francisco and we founded Twitter Incorporated. Before that, it had been more of an experiment and a side project. And we immediately founded in, I think it was March or April of 2007, Twitter Incorporated. And we started working on Twitter because we realized then our eyes were opened to a bigger potential than we had initially imagined. And so as we continued working on Twitter, and Twitter continued to grow, it continued to grow around the world. And it continued to find its way into all kinds of events around the world that we had never anticipated. It found its way into wildfires. It found its way into disaster relief during earthquakes. It found its way into political dissent and unrest. It found its way into student-organized revolts. I mean, there was something happened in Moldova of 2009, organized by students. I came into work the next day, and my voicemail box was completely full. My email was completely full. It was people like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and they were asking me, "Mr. Stone, what was your involvement in the Moldovan revolt?" And I was really tempted to say, well, I just didn't like that regime, and when I think it's time to flip a regime, I make a few calls. But that's not what I said. In fact, what I did was I went to Wikipedia and looked up Moldova to find out what. What do I know in Moldova? And that's part of the thing, is that we're here. We consider ourselves a service to foster the open communication among individuals, and because we believe that the open exchange of information really can lead to a positive global impact. And around the time when all these types of things were happening, and we were trying to keep the technology stabilized, and we're trying to build all these things, one of my friends asked me over lunch. He just said, "Look, what is it that you hope that people will say about Twitter in 5 or 10 years from now?" And with all these things going on, like this image, which is from the unrest during the elections in Iran, the past elections in Iran. With all this stuff going on, what is it that you hope people will think about Twitter in 5 to 10 years? And the answer came out very simply, that it occurred to me, it doesn't matter how sophisticated our algorithms get. It doesn't matter how many machines we end up adding to the network. That if Twitter is going to be a triumph, it's not going to be a triumph of technology. It's going to be a triumph of humanity. It's going to be what people do with this simple tool. People are basically good. You give them a simple tool that allows them to do more good things, and they will. And that is what became the realization that, yet again, drove us to wake up early in the morning, get into Twitter, and keep working on Twitter, because we felt that now we had, this important work to do and this meaningful work to do. And so that was my answer to my friend, and that's something that we continue to think about as we build Twitter. Okay, so now I'm going to take you back in time. This looks like an image of a bunch of naked dudes. And that's exactly what it is. But it also represents my childhood. And it's also from Wikipedia, so it's very academic. So that's okay. And I promise it'll make sense in a minute. When I was in high school, when I got to high school as a freshman in high school, I very much wanted to play on a sports team. And what had happened was I had never played sports before because my mom enlisted me in this group when I was a kid called the Boy Rangers. We weren't Boy Scouts. That was a whole thing that was very popular that people did. The Boy Rangers was modeled after Native American Indian tribes, and we had to learn how to do various feats of strength, both mental and physical. We were expected to do all sorts of things. We had to make our own headdress, and we had to advance from papoose through to warrior. It was a whole thing. And it took up a lot of my time. By the way, this is an image of Native American Indians playing a sport that was invented by them. So because my childhood was taken up by Boy Rangers, and because I never played, pee-wee baseball or soccer or any of these sports that all of the other kids in my town grew up playing, by the time I came to high school, and I really wanted to be on a team because I felt I was naturally athletic, I was so intimidated by all the rules, and I was intimidated by the fact that all the other kids already knew all the rules and already knew how to play these games. So I held back during the tryouts, and no coach wanted to hire the shy kid who refused to participate. So what I did instead was I did a little research, and I found a sport that my high school didn't offer. And that sport was lacrosse, which is seen here being played and been invented by Native Americans. That sport was lacrosse. Other schools in surrounding towns had this team, but ours didn't. So I asked the administration of the school if I could find a coach and enough kids to make a lacrosse team, can we do it? Can we make a lacrosse team? And they said, if you can do that, then fine. So we found a coach, we found enough kids, and my thinking was, if nobody knows how to play lacrosse, then we're all stupid. And I don't have to be intimidated. And the plan totally worked because what happened was I turned out to be really good at lacrosse, and the other kids elected me captain of the team, and I got to play be on a sports team throughout high school. I'll add, by the way, in the Boy Rangers, they also the other kids appointed me to be chief of the tribe, and they gave me the name of Owlbear because I was wise like an owl and strong like a bear. Anyway, that's just a separate thing. So I was able to play lacrosse. So, all right, I'm getting to the point. The takeaway that I got from this is that opportunities can be manufactured. You don't have to wait for someone to hand you an opportunity or wait long periods of time until you think you get a chance for an opportunity. You can create an opportunity for yourself, create an opening for yourself, and then exploit it and make it happen. And that's something that I learned in high school, and that I continue to think about as I go through life, as I guess a businessman. And so that was high school. Now, after high school, I decided I wanted to be an artist. So I got a scholarship to go to college for excellence in the arts. And so I was doing that, but I also needed a part-time job. So I got a part-time job at a publishing company in Boston, Massachusetts, called Little Brown and Company. And the job was very prestigious. I was to move heavy boxes of books from the upstairs down the flights of stairs to the downstairs and repeat. And it paid $10 an hour, so it was a good gig. So I was happy to have it, and that's what I was doing. But the interesting thing was, I was working at this publishing company just at a time when they began to switch over from sort of old-fashioned methods of doing graphic design to design the book covers in the art department. They had just switched over to Macintosh computers. And I had always used Macintosh computers growing up, so I was very familiar with them. And one day when the entire art department went out to lunch all at the same time, I snuck into the art department, and I went on one of the computers, and I designed a book jacket, and I printed it out, and I mounted it up, and I slipped it in with the other jackets to go off for approval in New York for editorial and sales. And then I went back to moving the boxes. And a few days later, the art director came back, and he said, "Who designed this book cover because it got approved?" And I said, "Me." And he said, "The box guy?" And I said, "Yeah." And he ended up offering me a job as a designer in the art department of designing book covers for this publishing company. And then I was faced with the decision, do I keep going to school or do I take this job? So I took the job because I figured people go to school to get a job like this, and I also figured more, let's save some time. The other thing, though, that even more important that I figured was I considered this to be like an apprenticeship with this very talented art director. I was able to sit with him day in and day out, and he would teach me everything he knew about graphic design. I also, tried to get everything else out of him. I tried to learn as much as I could from him. I actually asked him questions like, how did you know when it was the right time to marry your wife? Or I asked him, how much did you know, how did you know how much to ask for your first job for a salary? And I just asked him everything. And I learned a ton about graphic design working with this guy. And what's really interesting about studying graphic design is that it teaches you that there are so many different solutions to one problem. There are many creative solutions. So for any book cover, there's thousands of great solutions. And when you approach problems as if they're like an art project, they don't seem like problems anymore. They seem more like a fun puzzle to solve. And so I think graphic design is something that's worth studying no matter what field you end up going into, because it really gets you thinking creatively, and it gets you thinking about all the different ways you can approach a problem. And so what apprenticing with this art director taught me, and this is the lesson, and that I hold dear to this day, is the idea that, I'll tell you right now, the idea is that creativity is a renewable resource.